What's a good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So, been kind of thinking about off-season plans with the information we have now around surrounding Aaron Rodgers, right? So we know he'll be activated for the rest of the season. He won't be in any live games, and I called for this since we realized he was going to be returning to practice, right? In my mind, we know he's in scout team. He's playing with a lot of the depth players. The advantage here for the New York Jets was that he's going to help be able to get those guys on an accelerated learning curve. So you don't want to rely on them, but it would be nice to see guys like Jason Brownlee take a huge jump next year, Jeremy Ruckert, guys like Izzy Abandokondo when it comes to the pass protection issues that's keeping him from being on the field. Plenty of the defensive players are going to be able to take advantage of those reps against Aaron Rodgers trying to manipulate that defense, and we know that defense is mostly intact. So all of that works out perfect, but the two main priorities for us in my mind on the offensive side, and this goes like pretty much unsaid, but the offensive line 100%, and then we need to find a way to acquire a quarterback of the future. I don't want to wait until the 2025 draft class just because at that point, having 2 years is obviously going to be better than one in a sit and learn scenario. And who knows how the 2025 draft class pans out, but there's so many promising guys in this year's draft class from a quarterback perspective that I feel like you can actually build a franchise around, right? The name that's entertaining me the most right now is actually Washington's Michael Penix Jr. And so I kind of envision, and it depends on where his his draft value ultimately turns out to be. But you could potentially have a Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens type situation here for the Jets. I feel like we need to acquire a second rounder because that'll give us the ammo to try to move into that latter part of the first round easily without having to give up a ton of resources. And you can get that fifth-year option that you really realistically are going to want out of drafting a quarterback that late, right? But there's a lot to love, in my opinion, if you're going to target a guy like Michael Penix. And he'll probably be one of the first quarterbacks to try to break down as a likely target. But, you know, you take a look at some of the old school stuff that a lot of people will look at as kind of a barometer for the teams, and it would be establishing a winning culture in college, positive touchdown to interception ratio. Obviously, you want a guy that's athletic or kind of stands out in some way if you can get it. But then the accuracy, I think, in my mind, being the most important piece, and I think Michael Penix has that in spades. And so if you're Joe Douglas, right, it's going to be impossible for you to go out and sign 2 to 3 quality tackles in free agency, right? There might be 2 that's floating around there, and we're set up much better this time around. Aaron Rodgers coming back healthy. We already have him in place. That's already been broadcasted out to the universe, so we won't have another Orlando Brown type situation where we could have got him, but there was uncertainty. So I feel better from that aspect. But overall, we know the talent pool in free agency isn't what it was when it comes to the offensive line, but you should be able to find somebody that's at least a good insurance policy. You get to the draft, and depending on where we end up, I believe we're 6th again right now, but ultimately, you could find yourself in a situation if you're the Jets like we did last year, where we dropped just a single pick and we missed out on a guy like Broderick Jones. Fashanu and Joe Alt could potentially be gone if an extra quarterback or wide receiver potentially isn't drafted ahead of us, which would be the worst case scenario. But assuming a dream scenario here, we would get a Joe Alt, we would get a Fashanu, one of the two with our 6th round pick, if not if that does not end up being a higher selection, and then you get your quarterback of the future. Sit and stash. You literally wouldn't have to worry about anything, assuming we go out and we actually invest in a quality backup as well. And the names that I'm seeing out there on this quarterback free agency pool looks very, very well. Looks great as well, right? On paper, you have your Gardner Minshew's out there. You have your Jacoby Brissetts that are going to be out there and stuff. But keep in mind, again, I think I've seen the stat that was out there that at some point in the NFL, 50% of the backups have needed to start the season, right? So the NFL as a whole has been put on notice. I'm sure there's going to be a higher emphasis on making sure you get yourself a quality backup to be able to, keep a functional offense as well. But going back into the draft, I think a combination of a Joe Alter or Fashanu, and then being in the latter rounds, able to find yourself a Michael Penix, or maybe it's a JJ McCarthy or somebody like that. Personally, Michael Penix again has been the one that I've been honed into on at the moment, but I think it's the perfect opportunity for the Jets. Again, I would rather not wait until 2025. It would be nice to start being able to take those stepping stones as you are seeing your quarterback develop in the building. You know what you want or may need to surround a guy like Michael Penix with. That way, you're not only developing him without any kind of concerns, but you can also continue to build that infrastructure around him. The only tough part here is that I can't imagine the team being able to really develop him, which is why I want the 2 years with Aaron Rodgers and a guy like Michael Penix, because to be honest, I would give most of the credit to any improvements in the quarterback room to a guy like Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see, but I think that would mitigate a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right now. And it's all hypotheticals. Again, you would have to imagine what it would take to even try to get a second rounder. It would ideally take having to give up some kind of star on defense, right? That's where most of the excess talent that we have available to not necessarily harm us in a significant way. And it would probably be like a Bryce Huff tag and trade situation, although we could probably fetch a first rounder for him, I'd imagine. But it would probably be somebody like a Bryce Huff or maybe a John Franklin Myers, depending on what the league thinks about. We threw out the insane Sauce Gardner trade idea, and obviously you would have multiple first rounders to even consider, or at least premium players in a situation like that. But yeah, I don't know. Food for thought. Ultimately, I do think if we can't find a way to get that additional draft pick and at least give ourselves the option, winning the offseason is something I don't really care about, but we would absolutely need to perfectly nail every hand-picked free agent and every draft pick that we feel like can contribute immediately. And again, I think it's a draft that needs to be heavily favored towards the offense, and you would like a lot of win-now components. But for reasons I mentioned, I do think we need that quarterback of the future in this year. So let me know ultimately what you guys think. Michael Penix is my guy at the moment, obviously excluding top 10 talent quarterbacks, but who would you guys have as a quarterback of the future if you're able to find somebody, whether that's in the mid rounds or you go ahead and jump early to just grab who you love? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.